Episode 170. Today our topic is, what's the value of participating in the WordPress community or any web community? And before we get into today's episode, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Liquid Web. Liquid Web has been known for years as a managed hosting company with tons of options. But recently, they've designed a managed WordPress offering that's perfect for mission-critical sites. If you're looking for improved performance, maximized uptime, and incredible support, Liquid Web is the partner that you've been looking for. Every Liquid Web managed WordPress customer also has iThemes Sync integrated into their management portal, allowing you to update several sites with a single touch. So if you sign up today using the discount code WP-Tonic33, you'll get a 33% discount for the next 6 months. Visit liquidweb.com/WordPress to get started and use that code WP-Tonic33. And with that, we're going to start the show. We're going to let the panel introduce themselves. It's just three of us today. So just go around. Sally, who are you?
All right. My name is Sally Getch, and my business is WP Fangirl. I do mainly custom theme development on the Genesis framework, and I'm also the organizer of the East Bay WordPress Meetup group in Oakland, California.
Very good. And Jonathan, who are you?
Yeah, but before I do that, John, I just want to say that I've been using iThemes Sync for our WP-Tonic websites, and it's really slick, folks. So
I use it myself. It's pretty nice.
Yeah, it's really folks. So introduce myself. I'm the founder of WP-Tonic. We're maintenance WordPress support. We're your trusted partner. Try to give us a go.
Yes, definitely. And I'm John Locke. My business is Lockdown Design, and I provide custom WordPress development and local SEO for blue-collar industries. So before we get into today's main topic, we have just a couple news stories that are out there. Perhaps the big one is people who use Cloudflare. There was a memory leak caused by a parser bug, and this is being called like Cloud Bleed. That basically affected about a little bit over 3,400 sites, but it is patched now. But a couple things that we need to do is if you have a site that's using that, you need to change your WP config salts. Sally, any thoughts on this? Do you have stuff on Cloudflare? And
I have practically everything on Cloudflare. And in fact, one of my clients was experiencing some problems with her site, which manifested as certain errors in Cloudflare. And so when I saw the email about that, I'm like, I bet that's what it was, because Cloudflare disabled some of its features while they were fixing this bug. So yeah, I now have a bunch of sites that I need to go and change the salts for. I was just having a check on whether that's something that can be done with iThemes Security, which I also have installed on most of my sites. And yes, it can. Not that it's so difficult to do it manually, but there are a couple of hosts where they're not real fond of having you get at the WP config file.
Well, yeah, for security reasons, for sure. But yes, I think security can change the salts for you. One thing I wanted to ask you, for people who don't understand what Cloudflare does, what basically do people use it for, and why, did this like small data leak like even happen?
Well, people use it for all kinds of things. Some people use it sort of mainly for DNS management. And the reason that I like to use it, there are a couple of things. One is that, there are a ton of bots out there sort of sucking up your traffic by hitting your site. And some of them are trying to break in, and it's a, brute force issue. And some of them are just sort of, God only knows what they're out there doing. But so having stuff cached through Cloudflare helps with that because it reduces the actual demands on your own site. They do various other kinds of caching, which will speed up your delivery. They have a new service for caching JavaScript, which you have to be careful. It's not compatible with WooCommerce and some other things, but it can make a big speed difference in your site. And they also have some added security issues, so you can get free HTTPS through Cloudflare. So there's lots of good reasons to use it, and many companies, large and small, do use it. And so this was something that potentially could have affected an awful lot of sites.
Yeah, thoughts on this, Jonathan? Do you have anybody on Cloudflare?
No, we use Key CDN, which is a more
traditional CDN. Cloudflare is not really a CDN in the traditional sense of the word, where the idea is to keep your assets in a bunch of different places in order to deliver them faster to people who live closer to those servers.
It can do some of that, though, can't it?
It's sort of, but it's more as a sort of caching and performance layer that I use it, and I've considered also adding KeyCDN in on some sites.
I've been really very happy with them, John. It's a really lovely interface. Works. You have to do a bit of reading. It's not totally evident. I should go back to it and recheck everything. I've been very happy with it. I run Tonic and Wireless site on it.
Yep. So I have just a couple sites that I use Cloudflare for CNAME flattening, and so basically, I'm just going through and change the salts on those. So yeah, it didn't affect a lot of things, but if you do have sites that run on Cloudflare, we're going to link up an article that WordFence talked about, how to clean that up. We'll also link up the original post from Cloudflare in the show notes later. Second news story that we wanted to touch is from the Tavern. And we kind of just mentioned this a couple of weeks ago too, but this is worth revisiting. The WordPress core editor team has published a UI prototype for Gutenberg, which is an experimental block-based editor. And as Matt Mullenweg said in the State of the Word this year, one of the 3 areas that they want to focus on is improving the editor, because as we've noted like several times, people expect it to kind of work like Microsoft Word, like they expect to see like what's in the WordPress editor show up on the page. So there's a lot of other like improvements that are in here, but Sally, thoughts on Gutenberg?
I tried it out as soon as I found out about it, and I like it quite a bit so far. I mean, they didn't have very much of it actually working, but there's been a lot of discussion and issues about, as it stands, it's not very accessible. You can't move between blocks with a tab key, for instance. And so people are trying to engage in testing it themselves and doing some user testing and finding out what's confusing to people. How obvious is it when you look at the page that you can edit it? And I'm assuming that you get to that page by clicking something that says edit. So there is a cue that's not on the page that tells you that, but it's true. It's not quite clear. So I would definitely recommend that everybody go and test it and leave some comments on the post in the Make WordPress blog about it. See what it's like for you. But it seemed to me much nicer. It reminded me a bit of writing on Medium, and I'm very interested to see where it goes. I think it will seem a little more like what the average user is accustomed to, although I saw one person complain that this would never pass the mom test, that his mom would expect to see like all the options kind of laid out in in a ribbon, which you normally do in something like Word. So, I'm glad that they're working on it. I imagine it will evolve quite a bit before it gets implemented in any way.
Yeah, definitely. It does look like it's in the early stages. There do need to be, like I said, it's early stages on this. It does remind me of Medium a lot. They probably took a lot of inspiration from that. Jonathan, thoughts on this? Is this a step in the right direction?
Yeah, I thought it was great. I agree with Sally and yourself. They've copies, I'm not sure it's the right word, influenced by Medium, which I don't think is a bad idea, is it, John? I think their editor's one of their key selling points. It would just be interesting to see where they draw the boundary between page editing and page building. And kind of in some ways seems I'm looking for the right way to describe, niggly, but I feel there's a clear boundary between being able to do basic edits clearly and easily and trying to build a whole website or pages.
Yeah.
Did that make any sense, John?
You made perfect sense, and I think that it seems pretty clear with Gutenberg that they're just focusing on what is the content and how to edit the content with it. So this is about your page and what's on in this particular page or post versus the overall. You don't even see the rest of the layout of your site in that editor. You don't see what so it's not about, okay, let's tweak the header and the footer and the sidebar and the background and the whatnot. It's about, how can we edit the content in this page or post?
And I really do hope they do some of the things like Jackie, our panelist, suggested, where you could link the editor to more the style sheet. It's the designer, developer, or the theme producer has produced. I wish there was more kind of communication between those. So
yeah, well, this is a front-end editor, basically. So it's pulling in the style sheet of the theme while you're working, which is certainly an advantage.
Yeah. I think it looked... I didn't have time to test it like Sally has a bit. But I think it's been a really good start, don't you, John?
Yeah, I think it's off to a good start, and I would love to see a progress that they make on this as time goes on. One interesting thing to note is 90% of the code that is powering Gutenberg is JavaScript. So this is a more of the direction that the WordPress, the code base itself, is moving toward. Perhaps becoming more reliant on JavaScript. So last news story that we have is from Chris Lemma's blog, and this is, should I use the WordPress Jetpack plugin on my site? And basically this is just a review once more of the ever controversial Jetpack plugin. Basically a bundle of lots of smaller plugins, modules that people can use to perhaps get a basic site up and running. A lot of things are in there. And one of the things that he puts in there is addressing, is it, will Jetpack slow down your site? And he says it depends, and he uses a case of adding the extra CSS, and if you used another plugin to do that, it would do the same thing. Again, it's all about the modules. He gives some alternatives if you don't want to use Jetpack. Sally, thoughts on this article?
I think it made good points. It's interesting because the CSS argument is now irrelevant because the custom CSS in Jetpack has been moved into the customizer.
Yeah.
So you can add a bunch of custom CSS without, in fact, using Jetpack or any other plugin. And if you have thousands of lines of it will slow things down. There are things that will slow WordPress down, and it doesn't matter where they come from. So, I think Jetpack may have a worse rap in some areas than it deserves, but I'm really sorry Lee Jackson isn't here to respond to this.
Jonathan, thoughts?
Yeah, it is a shame that he isn't here. I've got to blatantly admit to the audience, I put the article in because it's a great article, but it also enabled me to plug our great interview with Chris on Wednesday. So it's a blatant plug for that, folks. Chris came on the show on Wednesday for almost over an hour and a half. You can see all the interview on WP-Tonic's website and on the Facebook page. And he was at his best, wasn't he, John?
Well, definitely. Both Chris and AJ Morris from Liquid Web were fielding questions, both from our panel. Sally and Lee Jackson were both there, and also from the people that were watching the webinar. So definitely that's something to go check out. Jetpack, the one thing that he addressed in this article, I mean, a lot of this is, comparing the Jetpack modules to other solutions that exist as plugins. The one thing that I would say that you have to consider when using Jetpack at this point is it does require like a WordPress.com account. So, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Akismet is the same way, but it will require you to have like one additional login. So,
it's really down to this whole. It's more of a philosophy. Do you think a one all-purpose Swiss Army knife type of solution that offers a coherent interface is really the appropriate solution? Or do you feel a more installing more specialized focus plugins that might have very different setting interfaces but have the benefit of a focus mission where if you've got a Swiss Army knife, they're dealing with a lot of different factors. It really depends what you feel down to philosophy is the best solution, isn't it, John?
Well, yeah, definitely. And again, with Jetpack, there are pros and cons to it. I mean, you wouldn't want to enable all the modules. I mean, that's something that you do have to watch. I think it gives you suggested modules that are kind of activated when you first install it. I use Jetpack on my own site and some of my client sites. And mostly I use it for things like the site stats, the sharing buttons, and the publicize feature. And a lot of the other things I don't really use all that much. But if you were inclined to do that, you certainly could. There are, some things in there that are good, so, but definitely I think when it comes down to it, I use it for the features I use it for, and the rest of the features that may be bundled in it, but I think are, better represented in other plugins. I use those plugins to do it. So there you go. Definitely one other thing that he calls back is if you're using Jetpack, but you maybe want to get just some of the slimmed down features, there is a plugin out there not associated with Automatic, but it's called Slim Pack, which is a lightweight Jetpack plugin. So that's definitely something to check out too. And with that, I think we're going to go to our break. And then when we come back, we're going to be talking our main topic, which is what's the value of participating in the WordPress community? We'll see you after the break. We're coming back from the break, and now we've got a fourth guest on the panel.
Yes, this is BC. Can't have a show go by without an appearance from BC.
Yeah.
John.
For those who'd be listening on the podcast, like Sally's cat is she's right there. She's headbutting her. My dog does that too. That's like how she gives hugs.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
So diving right into it. So Jonathan, you've been involved with the the meetups there in Nevada, and Sally, you run the East Bay meetup. Sally, like in your opinion, what is the big value of being a part of the meetups, being a part of the WordCamps and stuff like that?
Right. So there are a bunch of different things, but meeting and hanging out with people who share interests with you is certainly one of them, and those connections play out in a number of different ways. But one of the things that being the organizer of the meetup has done for me is really forced me to learn a bunch of stuff, because I have to teach it to other people. So it's improved my abilities as a speaker and as somebody who works with WordPress. Eventually, some of that became actual development. In the beginning, it was much more implementation type stuff. It's introduced me to a bunch of people. It has ultimately brought me work of various kinds and enabled me to bring work to some other people and find people to work with on different kinds of projects. So it's got a lot of different benefits over time, which is we were just having a presentation this last week about building your business, and one of the key points the presenter was making is you need a network, you need to develop a network, and that this is not, and it's not necessarily very useful to go to, quote, networking events, unquote, where everybody is out there just, trying to hand as many people their business cards as possible. It's much better to get involved in something like a meetup, or, where people have shared interests and get to know you over time, and then, may have a reason to recommend you to somebody. And, the people that I've met in the WordPress community over time not only have helped me out with a ton of things. I mean, I've had meetup members like help me when I was stuck on something, but also have sent business my way once they've kind of gotten to know what it is that I do that maybe they don't do, or they're too busy to do. So I would absolutely advise it. I think the community is one of the great strengths of WordPress. Occasionally, it's one of the great weaknesses of WordPress, but on the whole, I would say get involved. Get involved with your local meetup group if you have one, and find other places to connect with people who do WordPress.
So, Jonathan, in your experiences with being involved with the meetups and stuff like that, what benefits have you gotten from that? What benefits have you gotten from being involved, with WordCamps and meetups?
Well, funny enough, that's where I met my old co-host, Bill Conrad, and he actually persuaded me to start a podcast, John. So he said, I'm into podcasting and WordPress. Join me, John. And I thought, why not? But so that's the example, of the benefits of going to a local WordPress meetup, isn't it, John? But I think all the things that Sally outlined were fantastic. Obviously, some people would say, what's the purpose of going to a meeting where you're not marketing to your target audience? But, if you do start to specialize, or people get to know what specific area that you like doing, there's always the chance of them referring, or if they're really busy, I would imagine they would prefer to send any overload to a trusted source rather than just sending a possible client which they just haven't got the bandwidth to deal with to just go to a general freelancing marketplace, John. So, and then you get all the benefits of speakers. I think, you know, some speakers can really open your eyes. Presentations can, and then you got all the bigger side of the meetups actually working to the infrastructure of the WordCamps, don't you, John?
Yeah, definitely. I would say just from my like little bit of experience, you know, last year just helping with the WordCamp here in Sacramento, that you know, people tend to you know turn to you to ask questions if you're a deeper part of the community, if you're a more visible you know part, and that doesn't mean necessarily that you know have to be on the meetup team or anything like that, but if you like show up consistently at meetups, then people you know find out what you're good at. You get to know the other people in the meetup. You know who to refer work to. People know who to refer to you. Sally, you know, what's as far as that, you know, like observing the different people in the meetup, do you find like there's a lot of that facilitation of people referring work to each other if they get stuck? Or get unmute. You're unmute.
Sorry. Yeah, you know, the cat and
That's okay. That's okay.
Anyway, yeah, there's quite a bit of it that happens over time, and you know, I encourage people. Every meetup group has a you know a mailing list and a discussion board, and I encourage people, if they have jobs and need to hire somebody, to post that on the meetup list. And you know, I have recruiters get in touch with me via LinkedIn, and you know, I will post their jobs on the meetup list. And other things that I, you know, hear about that are just, you know, not appropriate for me, or that I, you know, don't have time to do. So I, you know, I try to encourage people to, you know, realize, yeah, you have this great resource of people out there who have a wide variety of talents. You know, the designers, the developers, the people who create content. You know, the people who may have, you know, background on you know, other platforms that you need. And so, you know, there's quite a bit of that. So people, you know, people do ask questions and reach out to each other for help.
So, Jonathan, did you find that as well when you, you know, were active in the Nevada meetup that you got to know, like, you know, who was good at what, and other people knew who in the meetup they could, you know, refer different like specialties to?
Well, the reason I'm hesitating in, folks, is you got to understand this Reno. Really, it's isolated, even though it's only 2 to 3 hours drive to Sacramento, but in the winter it can be rather more isolated because you're probably not going to want to drive to Sacramento in a storm.
Right.
So, and it's also linked to the attitudes that, well, it still is hosted in the Reno Collective, which is a well-known co-working building in Reno, folks, and a great place to work if you're a freelancer. So some of the WordPress freelancers that were based there did come and attend. The actual small group of agencies, digital agencies, they had a slightly different attitude. They weren't very encouraging that. They tried to keep their distance from WordPress and from the WordCamps to some extent, John.
You bring up a really interesting point, because that's something you said right at the tail end there, is something that I think that I've experienced here in Sacramento, and where there's a certain core, there's certain like agencies and people that will be involved with the WordPress Meetup and the WordCamp, because the WordPress community, that seems to be like one type of web community in each city. But there are other communities as well. There are like startup communities, and maybe like general web developer, JavaScript, these different types of communities. And for whatever reason, this seems to be like in a lot of cities, there's the hardcore WordPress people, and then here's all the other people that build sites with WordPress and are making hundreds of thousands of dollars for their web agency each year. But they don't come to these meetups and they don't learn. And for whatever reason. Sally, have you experienced that in the East Bay as well?
Not as much as that sort of thing. I think people who aren't willing to get involved tend to just not show up that much. I haven't seen too many cases where there are people who, they're sort of just trying to sell, or they don't want to, they don't want to share the available work or that kind of thing. Because, and nobody likes them. Now that when you actually become part of the official, like, WordPress community and have the WordPress Foundation sponsor your meetup, they make you go through this, training to talk about, inclusiveness and sharing and making everybody welcome and certain kinds of things that are and aren't appropriate regarding sponsors, regarding speakers, regarding, et cetera, and so on. And pretty much all of that was stuff we were already doing. I'm trying to, get more people involved in kind of choosing what we talk about, and, who else is there. And there's somebody who's going to set up a sort of additional group for kind of more advanced topics that maybe meets at another time. But you will find people anywhere who they don't seem to have what people think of as, the community spirit, or their sort of open source spirit of sharing stuff. And I think ultimately they deprive themselves as much as they do other people.
Well, I agree that what we think of as the WordPress community is kind of like the hardcore people that you see on Managed WP and leaving comments on the Tavern and Torque, or the people who watch podcasts like this, or the people who keep up with all that sort of thing. And there's a whole section of people that just use the technology to build stuff. And they don't really get involved with the community. They don't necessarily, keep up with what plugins are coming out, or, what's going on in core or anything like that. And it's really hard to try and, sell them, I guess, on the concept that, like, hey, you use this tool, like, we'd love you to be part of this community. Like, how do we get you involved? In the East Bay, do you guys go out of your way to try and pull people in, or do people just do the people that are going to be part of the community just seem to be attracted to you?
I haven't done that much to try to really market the meetup, and I sometimes wonder if I should. We have about 1,000 people who are actually sort of, part of the meetup group and on the list. Wow. But, any given meetup rarely has more than 30 people attending. And we do get people, joining pretty much all the time. This last time our speaker was from San Francisco and brought in, a number of people who regularly go to the San Francisco meetup, came to our meetup, and, they don't come that often. It's, San Francisco to Oakland is not very far, but you'd be surprised what a great distance it is in people's minds.
Yeah.
And I used to go to the SF meetup, but then I lived close to the BART and it was easy to get there. And now, it's an hour and a half drive on a weeknight, and no, it's not happening.
Not worth it. Yeah.
Not on a regular basis.
Yeah, I also think people can understand this, and I'd be interested to see if John and Sandy agrees with me. I always think meetups, and if a meetup is supported enough, it can then organise and run a WordCamp. And I think the Sacramento WordPress community have done a fantastic job with the previous two Sacramento WordCamps, and I think they were fantastic, John.
I want to give like a shout out to, Jennifer Bourne has really been the person that's, well, I mean, this last one, she really did the bulk of the work. She's really taken charge with this one as well. And William Mead, who is the teacher of web design, web development at the Art Institute, he took the lead on the first one. I definitely think that they've done a really good job in organizing and putting on the WordCamps, and for sure.
Yeah. The point was making, long-windedly making, folks, was that in most WordCamp, I see a healthy meetup WordPress community is that you can have probably about 4 to 5 individuals that are really prepared to do a lot of the organizing. And then you're going to have from 20 to 30, maybe 40 people that come pretty regularly. And then you're going to have a wider group that you might see 1 or twice a year. That's how it seems to work for me. And I think that's fine. I think it's really healthy just to have a core of 5 people. As long as those people, kind of new people, come into that group, and other people for personal business reasons for a period have to take a back seat. So it's still unofficially but reasonably open. I think when it gets into trouble, when it's just totally dominated by just one personality, if you understand what I mean.
Oh, Sally. No, but definitely, I what you're saying, what you guys are saying about your individual meetups is exactly what I've seen, and perhaps a lot of people, go through a similar thing. Where we have about 1,000 people on our list too, but we probably get anywhere, depending on what the format is, anywhere from 30 on the low end, to maybe like 50 on really high end. So there's like a big chunk of that community that you're really not, active participants so much. They're just kind of part of the meetup.
And I wasn't having to go at Sally. What I was pointing out is that she's been a fantastic organizer, and she's really, but a lot of people, I'm interested in how she's managed to keep doing it, because a lot of people burn out running it. Basically, they just burn out. Have you stopped that from happening, Sally?
It's partly because I still enjoy it. It's partly because although it does take work, it hasn't been burdensome, and it's mainly, I think, because I'm still getting out of it and getting things out of it. And I was a board member for the Bay Area Consultants Network for 10 years, and I realized that I had reached a point where I was just kind of phoning it in, and that meant that I needed to stop because it wasn't good for me, and it wasn't good for them. And if it gets to that point with this, it will be important for me to stop, because otherwise it's not going to serve the community. But so far it hasn't, because I continue to love WordPress and be interested and enjoy interacting with people, and it's it makes kind of a nice antidote. I work by myself at home most of the time, and so it's an opportunity to get out and actually talk to human beings, in person. and I have had pretty good luck finding people to speak on different topics when it's not something that I want to speak on, because, I don't really want it to be the all Sally all the time show. And people also who help. Anka Moshoyu, who's been on this show before. We started holding our meetups at her co-working space pretty early on, and she's been very helpful. There have been a couple of times when, at the last minute I wasn't able to make it, and, she just handled things, which was really nice. So, it's not like I'm stuck doing it completely on my own with no assistance or input from anybody. I think that would probably be kind of tough. But anything that depends on volunteers is vulnerable in a certain degree to either burnout, or just the fact that, your paying work might kind of eat your life for a while and make it not possible to do as much as you might like to.
Yeah, I totally agree with the points you're making. There isn't one ideal. I think if you can develop, depending on the area, we always, when I was active in the meetup been doing presentations and really trying to get new people to join. At our best, we got about 20 people turn up, 25, I think. It was really difficult getting it to the level where you could have like that small group of 4 or 5 really dedicated people, which I think every organisation needs when it's like that, basically, John.
No, and yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it's the big thing is just maintaining the sense of like, hey, like this is great. Like I said, like Sally, Anka Mashu, with Tech Liminal there. I mean, she's a stellar person, and contributing in that space. I want to ask you guys something that I wonder about too. Meeting people in person each month at WordPress events is almost like necessary. It's a good thing to do, but is it possible to be a part of the WordPress community if you're more of an introvert and maybe just exist online? Is there into meeting different people in the community like that, Sally?
Well, I have gotten to know people online through different kinds of places. I mean, like I got to know, Mika Epstein and Andrea Rennick mainly through Twitter, and then later, met them at WordCamp SF when that was still a thing. And it is possible to develop relationships online. I now belong to a Slack team for Genesis, and you do get to know people that way if you're actually interacting with them regularly. And for some people, that's going to be easier than operating in real life. And I wouldn't have wanted to go to WordCamp SF, without knowing anybody at all, and attempted to get to meet people there because it's, so many people and it's quite overpowering. But if you've in some way developed a connection with people ahead of time, and then you get to see them, when you go to an event, that's good. So, I think there are definitely ways, and I think that particularly if you live in a place where you haven't got a lot of a local community, you're going to have to rely more on places to meet people online. And I'm like the only person on the planet who doesn't use Facebook, so I haven't participated in any of the different Facebook groups for WordPress. But there are several of them depending on your interests.
Jonathan, thoughts on interacting with people online? Is that a possible inroads to being part of the community?
Oh, definitely think so. I think the possibilities now to communicate have never been wider or possible. You know, I kind of met the panel through outreach. I've met people through going to WordPress WordCamps, and they've become friends. And keeping in touch with those people through Twitter or Facebook or Slack, or the possibilities are much wider now, John, aren't they? So all for the benefit, really. Would you agree, John?
I would totally agree. And I think for me, like, I don't really travel around a lot. I never really have in my life been like.
You just live at home, don't you, John?
I live within like a 50-mile radius of my home, pretty much, and so, you know what I mean. I've always been that way, and for me, like, traveling around to like different WordCamps, it would be like a big deal. And so, like, online is like a way, like,
he doesn't. I haven't told him he's coming to me too with Los Angeles and something else. Oh, no, sorry, John.
Oh, no, that's cool. But definitely, like, like you were mentioning, when you kind of get to know people online through like Twitter or, participating in comments on their blog or whatever, you kind of get to know them. But, when you do have an opportunity to meet people, face to face, it really does kind of solidify it. Like, hey, this really is a cool person,
That's me finished, isn't it?
Oh, no. Oh, well. But okay, so just point blank question, what kind of, is there a, and I'll circle back to this with Sally. Like I said, there's a lot of, like, especially like around here, I'm sure it happens in every single city. Is there a competitive advantage to being involved in the WordPress community when you build sites on WordPress?
I think there is. And, it's, I don't think very hard about like, oh, who am I competing with, for
Right.
what? Because there is a ton of work out there, more than any of us can do. And I think it's, not just being involved in the WordPress community, but being involved in any community, being involved in your local community.
Oh, yeah.
But I think that, it's been a huge advantage for me, partly because it keeps me on top of what's happening and helps make me better at what I do. And it helps, and it means that if I'm going to work on a project where I need a larger team than me, I know where to, find people to work with whose work I can rely on. And, now that I've been a speaker at a couple of WordCamps, I can point people at the videos and they can, kind of get an impression of me as a speaker if I wanted to be speaking somewhere else, or, they wanted to work, considering hiring me for some kind of training. So I think it is a big advantage. That wasn't why I got started doing it. And I think if anything that you're doing just for what you can get out of it, you will get a lot less out of than if you're doing something because of, because you want to do it and, thinking about also what you can put into it.
No, definitely. Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you say. Yeah, as in, you're a lot closer to knowing, like, how to do stuff. You're learning from like other people. You're following things more closely. But not only that, you are in touch with a network of people who are know the code base really well. They know the tools. So if you need help, you know who to reach out to. And lastly, as you said, definitely when you speak in front of people in any capacity, you can point to that and people are like, oh, okay, this person must know what they're doing, because otherwise these people wouldn't let them speak in front of other people.
But it must benefit, mustn't it, John? Unless, choosing social credibility. Obviously, you're interested in the subject, that you're open to discuss things and support the community. They must be, in the end, you know, I know it's an overused term, but that karma should, in the end, come back, shouldn't it, John?
Well, definitely. I mean, you can't. I mean, as Sally pointed out, you can't do things. You can't like be involved in the community with like the thought of what can I get out of this. You know what I mean? It can't be like that. You know, you have to do it because you want to do it, and you know, you can't just you know, be part of any sort of group of people without wanting to, you know, participate. And honestly, like I love going to the meetups. Not because of, you know, oh, this person that's well known in our little bubble, I might run into them. It's like the people that I, you know, run into each month that nobody knows necessarily who they are outside of our, you know, local community. And those are the people that I really most enjoy like talking to, and I have the deepest friendships with. And, you know, that's really like, for me, it's like more valuable than anything else.
Another thing, folks,
Yeah.
if you want a little tip, if you want to build numbers up with a word meetup you think you might be running, try and get a sponsorship from a local business that can provide some free food. It always helps, folks.
Free food. Yeah, that's a great tip. Great tip.
It always helps to have some pizza.
Yeah, our meetup is at 1 p.m. on a Sunday, so and we definitely found that it was helpful to ensure that there was going to be food there.
Feed the masses, folks, with bread and fishes.
Feed me more. Anyway, yeah, definitely. So, what do you think? Like, anything else on the subject?
I think we've covered most areas, folks, and it's time to bring this episode, this set of the hardcore team at the heart of the WP-Tonic to end, John, don't you think?
You're right. The WP-Tonic posse is going to call it a day. And so, Sally, how do we find you?
You can find me at WPFangirl.com. I am at Sally Getch on Twitter, and you can find me everywhere else. If you can just spell my name, I'm unique in Google.
Sweet. Jonathan, how do we find you?
It's really easy, folks. You can either get me on Twitter, which is at Jonathan Denwood, or do still answer my email. Probably not the same day, but if you got a question or you want to get hold of me, just email me. And that's Jonathan, JONATHAN, at WP-Tonic.com.
Excellent. And you can find me at my website, which is lockdowndesign.com. Follow me on Twitter, lockdown_, or follow my Facebook page. It's just facebook.com/lockdowndesign. For the WP-Tonic, I want to say adios, sayonara, arrivederci, aloha, peace out, see you later, and get your dose.
Bye. Right. So we're still recording.